Hi everyone, today is April 23rd, 2017, and this is the Duel Assessment, your podcast for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. I'm GreenRanger.
And I'm Decktech. I'm back, for reals.
Yeah, he's back. Have you learned to speak with your hands yet?
Yeah, I was away at Italy, and so that's part of the thing. I've also grown a mustache.
Great. Last week we didn't have a show. There was a little mix-up with dates with recording another podcast, so we did a written show where we talked a lot about what did we talk about? Like a lot of the new things, like the new set mostly, I think.
Yeah, we hit. There was a lot of news, a lot of the announcements about this week, which of course now we're living things like the Bakura event ending and Pegasus starting and whatnot that we're going to talk about a little bit more later in this show. There were some announcements about the 1.4 update, just making sure you do your data transfer and whatnot. We had an announcement about the Duel Room feature, which is coming soon. We thought it might be in that update, but I don't think it was. I haven't tried it, so I'm not 100% sure. And we also talked about like the card traders updates, things that are leaving in next month, cards that are leaving, and cards that are now in it as of, I guess, 9 days ago now. And like you said, the new set was a big thing. We talked about some cards that we thought were going to make kind of a bigger impact, or were just kind of interesting to look out for. And we finished it off with a brief discussion about the announced Legendary Duelist skill changes. But we talked about how we were going to leave the bulk of that discussion to closer to the time that the changes go live, because obviously this game, the meta changes so quickly. There's liable to be a new set or some new events and stuff, adding new cards to the pool by then. So the meta, that these skill changes will of course change the meta, but they might be changing a different meta than the meta that we are in now, because it might have already changed naturally by other cards being added and whatnot. So we decided that we could talk a little bit about how we liked or didn't like various skill changes, and of course we did. But we're going to talk about more of the nitty-gritty type stuff closer to the time.
Yeah, just a lot of news, and we're going to be exploring these new cards and also the new meta together, so stay tuned for that. So what were you playing this week? We had a listener, Lats212 from Twitter, give us a suggestion about what to do here.
Yes, and we're going to get to the details of that suggestion later in the show in our fourth rate deck. But I've been playing a little bit of that. He wanted us to talk about Téa Burn, so I've been playing various versions of that. Since I was on vacation, I didn't have a ton of time to play, so I did that, and then I did the Pegasus once that came out kind of midweek, and that's mostly what I've been doing. I'm trying to get some of the new cards so that I can try out something fun that I have in my mind. But first I want to get through Pegasus and get my rewards there. How about you? What are you up to?
I was doing the Victory Viper thing on PvP for a little bit before the Pegasus event, and the deck's still, the same as it is. I got a Rising Energy, so that's pretty good for that deck. And then I went on a shopping spree yesterday. I had 2,500 gems, and I only used 2,000 of them, but I bought 10 packs from 4 sets, and I got like 2 URs, or 1 UR and 1 SR from each set at least. And some of the cards I got were pretty cool, like Gale Lizard, Senju. I never had Senju before. I think I tried to get a Mirror Force, but I got Senju instead, so I guess you could take that. The Atmosphere, I got that for the first time. I reset Wonders of the Sky, and I didn't get it last time, but I got the Atmosphere. Northmenko, which is a UR, Divine Grace Northmenko. I think that's the whole name of that card. It's a ritual monster. And the most exciting card I got was 7 Tools of the Bandit, which is pretty much better in Trap Jammer in any way, unless you have 900 life points or something. But in every other scenario, 7 Tools is just a superior card, and I've slotted it in my decks right away.
Yeah, that's just a solid card. We talked about that one as one of our cards that, like, the chase cards for the set. So congrats on that one, buddy. And I noted, based on what you just said, and based on what we've talked about before, you like to keep a 500 gem kind of cushion for when a new set comes out, right?
Yeah, I do this in other games too. I just like to have extra gems in case a new set comes out, just because they just come out without really any announcement.
Yeah, that's a good plan. I would probably do that too if I had self-control. So.
All right. So we're gonna dive into the news now. The Bakura event ended. What cards did you get? Like, you got a bunch of the Trance Archfiends, right? I think I saw you get those cards.
Yeah, I actually, I've always kind of wanted for their collection manager thing to have a sort by source.
Yeah, so a set sorter. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that I could see like exactly what I got, but I know I got a few of the super rares. I actually got 4 of that Fiend guy where you can discard a Fiend to make him buff. I think he's 1,500, and if you discard a Fiend, he gets an additional 500 for that turn.
Right.
Which is pretty solid for my Fiend, Necrofear type stuff that I was messing around with. And one of those was Prismatic, so that's fun.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. And I got, I think, one of the super rare of the tour bus.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not sure what else was part of that event, but I got
Dark Voltanus. I got 2 of those.
Dark Voltanus.
He's like a fairy. He's like 2,800 attack. He's not that good, but he was one of the SRs in the set.
Let me see if I pulled him. Let me look him up and see if I got him. 1 counter trap.
Yeah, I remember from me, I didn't get a certain card, but I got like 16 man-eating treasure chests. Or there was a magic card like Dark Mamba, I think it's called, and I got like 16 of those too. But I didn't really get anything good from Bakura.
Yeah, I think I got one of this Dark Voltanus guy, but like you said, it's not super good, so I wasn't that excited about him.
Right.
It's not a Fiend, so even like the other 2 were okay. They weren't like great cards, but they were Fiends, so they went right into my Necrofear deck. Right. I haven't yet found a home for Voltanus.
All right. Yeah, the event ended and the Pegasus event began, and how it works is you're going around fighting the Vagabond and also the SDs or any of the legendary duels that just come up. The ones that come up in the gate where you pay for them, they don't give you star trips, so that's important to know. And you get 2 bonus duels each game. I think when it restarts, so you can get like 15 star chips from a duel 2 times a day. And you get star chips, and then you challenge Pegasus at the red duel gate. So you could pay like 40 star chips for level 40. I think it's 20 for 30. And then you also get the free level 50 Pegasus that wanders around rarely. And it's good to actually have a notification now where Relinquish shows up and they say Pegasus level 50 is here. So that's pretty cool. And that's a Relinquish deck instead of a Toon deck. So
right. A Redditor noted, and I haven't gotten far enough to completely test it, but he noted that the Pegasus level 50 first shows up at either 30 or 300,000, whatever point. Must be 300,000 based on how the scores work, but shows up first at once you cross the 300,000 threshold, and then shows up every 600,000 after that.
That makes sense.
I noticed that it was correct for the first 2 appearances, but I don't know if I've gotten to that third one. Would be at 1.5 million. I don't think I'm quite there yet. So
no, I didn't even notice that. I noticed that he comes out after you beat him. So I didn't even count points. I think I just got Relinquished, so I'm at 1.7 now. But I faced level 50 3 or 4 times, I'd say, estimating.
Okay. So it might be true then. If it's cool. 3, then it's true.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Should we go over some of the Toon Monsters they gave out, or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You can go over some of the cards they give out. I was thinking the event itself was kind of tied to they just added a bunch of Korean players, of course,
right.
as they announced. And I think that the event might have been intended to allow new players to just very quickly catch up, because obviously Relinquished is a very powerful card. I still think it's the single most powerful card in the game right now. And so giving two versions of it to all these new players is kind of a nice way to immediately let them bump up to at least semi-competitive level, even though they're missing a lot of the cards that are in the back catalog.
I know from the first time you faced Pegasus, you got a Relinquished right away, I think, right? And then you got a second one at like 2 million, I think?
Yeah, I don't remember what the exact points were, but you got one in his deck, so as soon as you unlocked him, which was fairly early on, and then you got another one once you got to a certain point, which was like fairly long into it, but close enough. Yeah, I think it was 200,000.
It was definitely doable. Definitely doable. Yeah. And I forgot that the Korean players would just get Pegasus right away, so we already skipped that part, having got him before. So they should be able to get 2 Relinquished. Yeah, this time it's 1.5 million for the second copy.
Right. And they might have upped that just because for some of us it would be our third copy. So it might be higher than it was previously. I'm not actually, like I said, I don't really remember. But
do you think it's worth getting a third one, like a 3 Relinquished deck?
Oh, definitely. I think for people like me, I only have one Senju. We talked about this before, and even with just one Senju, I was using the Thunder Dragons and Switcheroo to kind of make it a little bit more consistent. But 2 Relinquished and 2 Dark Ritual with the one Senju was fairly consistent and good enough to get me to King of Games back when I did that a little while ago. I think a third copy would be especially impactful for people like me who don't have all of the searchers. The people who already had like the complete deck, as you would, with 2 Relinquished, 2 Ritual, 3 Sonics, and 3 Senjus, like, for them, it's not going to make as much of a difference because they probably, based on that and the switcheroo and everything, they probably would always have Relinquished when they need it anyway. So the extra one wouldn't be terribly, diminishing returns type thing. But for people like me who are missing some of the searchers, it's a very big difference to have that third Relinquished at Ritual, of course.
Yeah, thinking about it, you just have a 15% chance of just having it. Well, it's probably higher because you draw 5 cards, so it's pretty good probability you have Relinquished right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at some of the cards he's giving out now. Toon Dark Magician Girl, Toon Blue Eyes Toon Dragon, Toon Mermaid, Toon Buster Blader, and Toon Defense.
Yeah.
And also Black Illusion Ritual and, of course, Relinquished. So the Toon Monsters, I guess, it's kind of gimmicky, but some of them could attack directly, so that's pretty, it's pretty powerful. But if, Toon World gets destroyed, they get destroyed. And I think you have to wait a turn before they can attack. Yeah,
I'm generally not a fan of the Toon Monsters. They're kind of cute little chibi things, so that's a selling point, I guess. In terms of actual gameplay, though, I haven't really used any of them, but it's fun, and I know some people were really bummed last time that they didn't get enough stuff to really play an actual Toon deck, and so I think it's nice that they're kind of giving more Toon stuff just by playing through it this time. So hopefully those people who actually wanted to play it will be able to do so now that they've gotten a second stab at it.
I just noticed that Toon World, the card, is not a reward this time.
Yeah, I'm seeing that as well. I think it's probably, it's got to be still in his deck, so it's a reward in that sense for people who hadn't yet unlocked him.
Yeah.
But everyone else has to win it from him, which, of course, you need the Toon World card or else you can't run the deck, and it's a super rare, so it's kind of hard to get it, and it's unfortunate because, like I said, I think one of the reasons why they were bringing it back was to let people who didn't get everything they needed the first time to actually be able to play the Toon World deck. You can't play it without 2 or probably 3 Toon Worlds, unless I think Pegasus has an ability that lets you start with it, so maybe you only need 1 or 2. But regardless, like, you need Toon World, and so people who aren't getting that critical mass of Toons or Toon World aren't going to be able to play it. And I guess it's kind of forcing you to use his ability to start with it by making it super rare, making it kind of hard to get onto. But they are giving us a lot more of the actual Toon monsters, which is the other part of what you need. So I guess they're kind of meeting the Toon players halfway. But like I said, I'm not interested in the Toon deck, so I don't really know exactly how I would build it. I don't know if we have what we need or if we're still missing something.
Yeah, it's just a really fancy win more deck, just if you want something different to play, I guess. And you noticed that there was an admin message in the chat for the first time, right?
Yeah, that kind of, I don't know, piqued my interest. It was the first time that I had seen one. And I thought that was a sign that they could at least regulate the chat a little more. Anyone who's had the chat open or has played for any significant amount of time has probably noticed that it's like 90% spam. So it would be nice if there were some sort of chat regulation, and having admin chat capabilities seem like a good way to kind of go in that direction, or at least point that they're, aware of what's going on in the chat maybe. The reason why they had the chat announcement also was because there were actually some issues with the Pegasus event. For whatever reason, the initial launch didn't work. It was like a day late. And so that was I think the admin announcement was to tell us when the new release was going to be, the new launch. And then I don't know if that was late or if it was me, but it didn't restart for me at the time that they said it would. I was abroad at the time, so it might have been something going on there, or it might have just been that I had to restart the app because after I closed it and opened it again, it was working, or it was live. But I'm thinking it was possibly late from that late start as well. So, that was kind of a bummer. And then there were also some announcements in the game that there were some issues with Pegasus's level 50 deck with I think it was 2 cards, 2 separate instances of cards not really loading properly, and so they kind of had to sub out cards. And all of that kind of resulted in them giving us some gems, which was nice.
Yeah, it's always
especially
good.
Since the Pegasus level 50 issue, like we just said, it's behind the, whatever it was, 300,000 point cap, so I doubt too many people were affected by the Pegasus issue, because I saw the announcement right away. I think it was probably the same day that it actually launched that they noticed some of the cards weren't working. So I don't think that too many people were affected by that one. And obviously delaying it a day doesn't really affect anyone because they just keep it going, 1 day longer. So all in all, we kind of just got some free gems just as a bit of a practice in patience. We had to wait a day, but other than that, it was nice.
Yeah, I was joking how they had to go back in time and get a VCR player, so that's why it didn't load.
That's right.
Oh yeah, and there was also 2 cards from Chaotic Compliance that messed up. Seismic something, and then some dinosaur continuous card, but they froze the game or something. There's some interaction, but
yeah.
they communicated that as well. So I'm not sure if that showed up in the chat, but that's something that they made us aware of right away.
Yeah, that one wasn't in the chat, but it was in the notifications, and so I forgot about that one.
Yeah. All right. We got a bunch of free gems. We got the gems every day from the Korean launch, 4 million downloads, and also the Pegasus event.
Right. Yeah. That issue with the Pegasus event, and then there's also some gems, of course, from like playing the Pegasus event, and so that's why I guess you ended up with all those extra gems,
Yeah.
2,500.
And we're not endorsing this, but didn't you say you got gems from one of the spam sites once? You said it actually worked, right?
Oh no. I was joking. I never got.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, don't go to those. They'll probably like steal your phone information or upload a virus or something. That was no endorsement there, and no personal knowledge either.
All right, I thought you were actually. I thought that actually happened. That was a while back, though. Okay, and we mentioned the dual replays. Dual replays were added, so you just hit like the little video camcorder button, and then that records your game. I guess this helps in a way for tournament play because people were using their own third-party apps to record the game, right?
Yeah, I think it's a nod or push towards allowing more tournament play, maybe more like third-party tournament things, because if it were an official Duel Links tournament, they might have some other means of doing it. But the replay is really good for keeping a check on cheating in tournaments, and that's why you had to record it in the other previous tournaments, and that's why we've both done some Hearthstone stuff where they tell you to screen grab your victory scenes. And so the whole point is that if you're playing in maybe a non-official tournament or something like that, they don't have like admins watching your game every moment. Even in probably in official ones, they're not going to have that until you get to maybe higher levels of play. So if you have all these thousands of games going, or whatever it is, maybe a smaller local tournament even, you can't really watch everything. So it's a form of evidence for who won. So the other guy doesn't say, "Oh no, I won," or "Oh, we never played," or whatever. You have proof that you actually played and you actually won, like you said you did. It's a little bit sad that that's kind of necessary, but it has proven necessary in other similar tournament experiences. So I think that's maybe what that's for. I was also thinking that it's helpful for like spectator experiences. Duel Links is primarily on your phone. Some people do emulators and whatnot, but and record their games on YouTube. But for most people, I'm just playing on my phone in the background while I'm doing stuff. And so the replays are good for if someone wants to have some sort of spectator experience. Going back to our shared experience with other games, they'll do like a whole show about these regional championships or this tournament or whatever, and it's all put up on maybe Twitch or something, and then YouTube VODs. But they have like a whole production where you can watch the gameplay, and they have like the shoutcasters talking about what's going on in the game, and it's not a mobile game. A truly 100% mobile game isn't as conducive to that, and so it's nice to give this replay feature. They can kind of do a modified version maybe where you play the game and you have the replay saved. And I haven't actually watched any replay. I don't think I've actually saved any replays either. So I'm not sure if it like plays it at 2 times speed or something that makes this whole conversation moot. But I think you could just kind of play it as like a video and then have people talk over it, or have like maybe an interview like, so what were you thinking here? Why'd you make this play? Why'd you interview with the player after the fact? And so obviously it doesn't have that live, tie-in that you might be used to. But if the announcers haven't watched the game prior to that and don't know the result, then you get the same shoutcasting, same excitement from them. Or you can get kind of more of that delayed analysis with the player and stuff. So I think there's some cool room there for kind of production value of presenting tournaments in the future, especially if this game continues to grow and that becomes like a major potential revenue source.
Yeah, those are really good points. Also, I guess if there's a deck that you see a list but you don't know how to play, you could just, it's more available for people to upload on YouTube for their guides, I guess, that they have this recording of them playing the game, so you would actually know how to play a deck.
Yeah, I think going, a lot of players in the other communities where they don't have the replays really want it so that they can go back and review their game and be like, okay, here's the turning point, here's where I messed up, or here's where I made a bad read, and was that looking at hindsight, was this a good read? So in addition to kind of uploading your own replays to help other people or to make your YouTube channel or whatever, you can review your replays to refine your own play and make sure that you're doing it correctly and whatnot. And so that can kind of help make higher level players overall for the tournaments, which again ties into making the whole scene kind of more legitimate and expanding upon it and everything, so that you can have a nice tournament scene kind of coming up. And replays are kind of a subtle but possibly really important part of that.
Yeah, so overall, dual replays are a good thing for this game.
Yeah, I don't see how it could be a bad thing, and it's at least a cool thing.
Great. And we mentioned the upcoming skill changes. We're going to talk about them more in the future, and something we're going to probably talk about is why Harpy's Hunting Ground was not included in the nerfs. We'll probably talk about it more in the future, but what are some of your first thoughts about that?
Yeah, so we were discussing a little bit earlier, and I think there's maybe two reasons why they did not include it now. And one reason is that harpies are, of course, like integral to Mai's character. She's all about harpies in the show. They've given us a lot of harpies through her character rewards. And so I think perhaps they feel that if you nerf Harpy's Hunting Ground, then you essentially nerf like Mai in the entirety, and you nerf harpies and whatnot, and they perhaps decided that that's an important part of this game, especially since Mai and her harpies were fairly large characters in the seasons 1 and 2 that this game's kind of built around. But I guess the counterpoint to that is that if that were the case, they could have just nerfed it a little bit and still kept it perhaps her best skill and perhaps made it still viable, but not at this point it's probably like the second best skill, maybe. It's obviously integral to harpy decks, and you wouldn't be running them without it. And harpies have gotten, like we've talked about before, in recent sets, they've gotten a lot of support. So it's a really solid deck, and it's an interesting choice to not touch it at all. The second reason why I think that might have been the case is because they knew they were adding Relinquish back into the card pool. So there's going to be a whole new wave of people who didn't have it before who now have it, and there's been and the people who already had it, like I said, now get their third copy. So there's going to be a lot more Relinquished just in the meta overall. And perhaps harpies were intended to kind of counter Relinquished, because Relinquished has that same issue where it's pretty much a key card for Pegasus, who is like the main feature character for the first season of the show. And so perhaps they were thinking, we need to have Relinquished in this game for like those roleplay story reasons. And but Relinquished is just like a power level higher than pretty much anything else in the game. So as a check on that, maybe they want harpies to stay strong. I'm not exactly sure. Harpies also kind of counters harpies. So any mirror match, of course, if it's a true mirror match, it's going to be 50-50. But if you are playing harpies, you have to deal with the annoying fact that your opponent's harpies will kill your Harpy's Hunting Ground. So it kind of becomes the first player to get a harpy out wins. And so maybe that's intended to deter a little bit of harpy play. So all in all, I'm thinking some of the reasons why they might not have done it this time are one for those like story feel type reasons where they wanted it to tie into the show and they wanted harpies to be important, and two is that for metagame reasons, they wanted the harpies to counter the relinquish that they were adding back into the meta, and they felt that harpies could be sufficiently kept in check with other harpies, and with, you noted, of course, like all the field spells can be gotten rid of with like Dispel and other similar spell destruction cards.
Right. Well, we'll talk about more in the future about the other skills as well. Maybe this one as well. All right. So we're going to move on to the Duel School, which is the main content gameplay type situation here. And today's is the Téa Burn deck, which is often known by Standby because there's a Téa ability called Standby Duel. And we got this request from Lats212, who has been a pretty big fan of ours on Twitter. He's been pretty appreciative of the podcast, so thanks a lot. Decktech played the Téa Burn deck a lot, and what are your thoughts on the deck?
Yeah, so as far as I can tell, the first step that I did when I was going to play it was kind of research it a little bit. The deck's been around forever, so I was surprised when I went to Game A, which is one of the better sources that we use to research stuff and to keep track of the Duel Links meta. And Game A had bumped it up to Tier 1 deck, and I can check right now to see if that's still the case. But
I think they gave it a 9 out of 10.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this deck had previously been like not even noted on their tier list. I think it had been like in the kind of all the other decks list. And so I found that interesting, first of all, that they kind of bumped it up right away. And then I looked at the deck, and it seemed like there were not that many card changes. So it seems like it's the same deck for the most part, with one notable exception I'm going to talk about in a sec. But and now all of a sudden it's jumped a bunch of levels in the tier list. And I tried to think about like what matchups it has that would account for that difference. And I can't really think of what matchups are particularly good or bad that would make it jump so high. The one matchup that I know is pretty solid is relinquished decks, because they tend to fill up their hand with like Thunder Dragons and whatnot. Not if they're decent players, because as soon as you see the dual standby skill, you know what you're up against. But some players will still accidentally do that, and the relinquished itself, the body isn't very good against the deck that runs so few monsters. So I'm thinking that perhaps the good matchup against relinquished is the reason why it bumped up. But the counterpoint to that is that relinquished has been tier 1 since relinquished came out, so that hasn't changed really either. And perhaps the standby burn was a little bit early. It's like a preemptory bump because they knew that relinquished was going to become more popular. But I'm thinking more likely is that somebody, and I could have sworn I saw someone say it, but I couldn't find where, somebody did really well with this in some tournament or something, or took it to King of Games or something, and it kind of just caught fire and got a lot more attention, and therefore got a lot more play. It's kind of what I'm thinking is more likely what happened.
I just want to add something about that.
Yeah.
It's possible, like, the lack of information about it, and also that dual standby is not one of the skills you get for free. Like, my Téa doesn't have dual standby, so it's possible that people didn't know the skill existed, and, like you said, someone in a tournament got the skill, and that's when it caught on fire, I guess. Yeah,
maybe that's... I actually had forgotten that she didn't come with it, so maybe that's what was going on there. So looking at the deck, I saw that there's two main versions and then like a third sub version that a few people on Reddit were talking about, or perhaps Game A. The main two are a version that's almost entirely spell based, and then a version that has a few more monsters. And the main new monster, and the reason why this deck should have changed recently, is Lady Assailant of Flames. And that's a new card from the new set, Chaotic Compliance. And it's a neutral, so it's actually pretty easy to get. Although, funny story, in testing this deck, I was waiting for my Lady Assailants of Flames this whole time. I still don't have a full playset, so I had to kind of run a slightly janky version. But it's a 4-star monster, 1500 attack, 1000 defense, which are obviously not great stats, but it's good enough. 1500's good enough to contest some stuff. If you happen to have an open board for whatever reason, 1500's a solid swing in. So I think it's important to note that her stats are okay. And her flip effect is remove 3 cards from the top of your deck from play to inflict 800 points of damage to your opponent's life points. So she is another set of damage spells, essentially. And it's also stall because it's a flip effect. So you set her, they attack into it, and then you get the 800. So to me, this is the biggest single change that would make sense for the deck to get this huge boost in power. But a lot of versions weren't running it. The spell-heavy version wasn't really running it either. Looking at the Game A lists, I think one of the 2 ran it, but the other one didn't. And I saw that was kind of common on our friends at Yugi Decks and Reddit. Not everyone ran it, and I think that that's a big mistake. You definitely want to run her. I think it's one of the most solid cards. Before I get too much more into that, I guess I should say that the main card, the build-around card for this deck is Reconstructor Revolution. All versions run it, and that's a card that deals 200 damage to your opponent's life points for each card in their hand. So that's why you're running the Duel Standby. That's why you are running Cup of Ace, which is flip a coin. If it's heads, you draw 2. If it's tails, your opponent draws 2. And so Reconstructor Revolution makes the downsides to the ability and to Cup of Ace into at least neutral, sometimes positive effects, where you want their hand to be full so you can deal more damage to them. And that's the point that I was coming to with the relinquished decks, where it's kind of a better matchup for you because they tend to have their hands pretty full. You need to have the ritual in your hand. You need to have relinquished in your hand. You're trying to find monsters to feed into it, and so unless you are specifically trying to keep your hand empty with that deck and with a lot of other decks, card advantage is a central point of the game. So a lot of decks are intentionally trying to keep their hands more full, and so this is a nice way to kind of flip that on its head. The whole deck actually kind of flips the game on its head because instead of playing monsters for the most part, you are playing spells and you're giving your opponent cards and stuff. And when you kind of put that all together, the deck is a lot more consistent, having played it, than it looks and than it really has any business being. It's not a gimmick deck like Game A thought and like I thought. And kind of like the whole community kind of thought until we all started playing it and we're like, oh, okay, this deck's actually pretty solid. Which, like you said, I guess maybe it was nobody had been playing it, and then once people started playing it, they realized that it was actually good. So going back to the 3 versions, there's the super spell heavy version, and that one tends to run the Cobra Jar and the Gravekeeper's Curse, and maybe 1 or 2 other monsters. But for the most part, you're just... And those 2 monsters are essentially burn spells as well. The Cobra Jar adds a token, which when it dies, it deals 500. The Gravekeeper's Curse, when you summon it, it deals 500. So those 2 are essentially burn spells with bodies. And You also just run of course, the Cup of Ace, the Reconstructors. You maybe run some Burning Lands. You're going to want to run Hinotama. Is not a great card in the actual physical TCG, but it's solid in this one. It's just deal 500 damage. Goblin Thief is a better version of Hinotama. It's deal 500 damage and gain 500 life. And then some versions run, most versions probably run Card of Sanctity, which is a Pegasus event card. So you might have picked one up by now to get a little bit more card advantage. I'm not a huge fan of that card. The downside isn't appealing to me, but most people kind of run it to refill. I'm more of a fan of running Attack and Receive, which is a trap card, and it's the most damage in a single card, I think. So it's 700 plus an additional 300 for each Attack and Receive that's already in your deck, which means, in your graveyard, which means you can't chain them at the same time to get the bonus 300, I learned while playing. But 700, 1,000, 1,300, you're talking about 2, almost even 3 times as much damage as you can get from your other burn spells. So I like that one, and I also liked that it synergized well with Burning Lands, where you can force yourself to take some damage to do Attack and Receive. The downside to that is that Attack and Receive does not work. It's kind of a little bit of anti-synergy with Lady Assailant of Flames, because she might remove your other Attack and Receive from the game. But it's not too bad, because you can consider the cards that Lady Assailant removed to have just been kind of on the bottom of your deck. This deck, the whole point of this deck really is that you win usually on turn 2 or 3 maybe, and it's possible to even win on your first turn if you get a perfect draw, but that doesn't happen very often. And so you're not getting to the deck out phase. Even if you mill yourself for 9 cards with all 3 Lady Assailants, it's probably still not going to get to the deck out phase. So the downside isn't really a downside almost at all. The other card that it has anti-synergy with is the Cards of Sanctity, because your set traps are things that you have to banish from a Card of Sanctity. So I think that's maybe why Attack and Receive does not get as much play, because Card of Sanctity and Lady Assailant of Flames get a lot of play. But I think Attack and Receive is a great card for the deck, especially the more spell-heavy version. The monster-heavy version is very similar, except you're going to want to all the way 3 up on your Lady Assailants. I kind of kept I'm going to put versions in the show notes so you can take a look at what I'm talking about. I found one that got King of Games with 3 Lady Assailants, which I think is the right number, and I'm calling that more the monster-based one, because she feels like more of a monster than just the Gravekeeper's Curse to me. And then the final version is one that I saw people talking about on Game A, and it's more of a standby/burn deck. And the person who was talking about it was saying that the burn essentially gives your deck a sense of inevitability. Except for decks that have consistent life gain, which are few and far between, if you have Burning Lands out and if you're top decking burn spells, it's only a matter of time before you get to 4,000, which is pretty low when each card deals 500 or more. And so I took his idea and I made a deck based on that. He said that the most important card to him in his build was Golden Apples, which makes sense to me because it cancels out their attack by gaining you life, and then it gives you a body to either attack their face with or to block more attacks. And so it allows you to make those big swings and to kind of keep yourself ahead, because I found a lot that this deck has very slim margins. you need to draw. You have infinite burn over time. Well, not infinite, of course, but you have like way more than you need over the course of the game. If you were to draw your entire deck, you win almost certainly in terms of how much damage you can do, because no deck is going to get up to 10,000 life or whatever it is that would put them completely out of range. But your games aren't going that long. Even if you don't win in the first couple turns, you run so few monsters that your opponent's going to win in the first couple turns. They're going to attack over you and eventually win. So a lot of games, especially in the more spell-heavy versions of the deck, are, you're at 400 and they're dead. Or if you happen to get there on the second turn, then you're a little bit higher because they only got to attack you once. But essentially, you don't run very many defensive cards, and some of your cards even hurt you yourself, like Burning Lands, Big Shield Gardna can result in you getting hurt a little bit. And so I tended to win or lose games are ending pretty quickly. And so if you're running the stall and burn version, it gives you a few more turns to draw into that burn. So it's a little bit less explosive, but you've got the golden apples, you've got the Big Shield Gardna, just to kind of make sure the game goes a little bit longer so that you can draw into those last couple burn cards. So I've got one of each version, that King of Games deck list, and then two of my own based on what I'd seen in those sources for how you might build the deck.
All right. That's a lot about it. We know that the deck, I joke about this a lot, we know that the deck is not interactive at all, but is it fun to play? Yeah,
I would say it is pretty fun to play, and I think that's maybe part of the reason why people are using it. I think the main reason why people are using it is because it's super quick, and so in the low levels of PvP where you only need to win 2 games in a row to gain a rank or whatever, it's really easy to just kind of flip coins until you get 2 in a row. It doesn't really even matter if the deck's particularly good. If you can just play really quickly, then you can gain ranks pretty quickly at the low level. I would not recommend it, trying to take this deck to King of Games. I think that would get really frustrating, but any deck where you're doing a lot of stuff on your turn and you're winning kind of quickly, to me, that's fun. I get to play 10 spells on my turn. I'm Cup of Ace, blah, 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 boom, and you're dead, all to your face. And that's kind of the explosive nature of it. It feels similar when it works and when it goes off like that to the original fun and interactive Hearthstone deck that comes from. So I think that it's definitely something that you'd want to try, and apologies to Lats, because I think he specifically wanted us to figure out how to beat it, and that he didn't want to see it more. But I do think that it's a deck that people should give it a try, because it's kind of fun, and it's also a deck that has a really low skill barrier, where it's really easy to play at the bottom threshold level to actually be able to win games, but it has a higher skill cap than it appears. You're not just throwing spells at the opponent's face like it looks like. You, for instance, wouldn't want to Cup of Ace if you don't have the Reconstructor or Revolution in your hand, because then there's a 50% downside that you can't take advantage of. Unless you are trying to, they're at 500 and you just need one of your burn spells, you're like, okay, I'll risk it. I'll take that coin flip and see if I can win this turn so they don't get another attack. Or, there's a little bit of thought of which of your monsters goes into play and how you play them. Am I going to play this Gravekeeper's Curse right now for the 500 damage, but I only have an 800 attack guy on the board, so, there's a lot more thought that goes into it at a higher level than people are probably willing to give it credit for at this point. But anyway, it's a fun deck to try. And to I guess to make it up to Lats, I did kind of come up with some ways to beat it or play against it at least, and some things that gave me trouble while I was playing it. And of course, the main weakness for the deck is life gain. If your main source of damage is monsters, then life gain is very poor because it's a one-time investment to gain life that in most cases is actually less than the average 4-star monster's attack anyway. So every once in a while you can gain like 2,000 for one spell, but most spells cap out at like 1,000 life, which is pretty low. So if they have monsters on the board, they're attacking in, and they get, for one card, they get multiple attacks that each attack deals more than your life gain. So life gain sucks against monsters. But against damage spells, it's really solid because your life gain's about twice as strong as their damage spells tend to be. And they don't have that recurring source of damage in the monster attacks. Their recurring damage is the Burning Lands, which is not nothing, but it's a lot less than the 1,700 that you get attacked in the face with. So the problem is, like I said, life gain is bad against monsters. So it's kind of like, what metagame am I in? Is it worth it to run life gain, which is really bad against monster-based decks, which are, the main types of decks in this game, but really solid against burn decks. So I guess other tips that aren't based on what type of building your deck differently are that you want to empty your hand as soon as possible to avoid Reconstructor Revolution hits. So you want to, if you're going first, you want to set 3 spell traps, even if you don't need to. I don't think I've seen any version of this deck yet that runs, what's it called, the Full House or whatever.
Straight Flush?
Straight Flush, there you go. So you don't need to worry about that. I don't think any of them run any of the spell or trap disruption at all because that's taking up deck slots in their deck and taking up cards in their hand because it's, like I said, it's very tight margins. So they're not going to run those cards. So you don't have to worry about setting them like you would against other people. You just want to get them out of your hand because each time you do, you can count that as gaining 200 life or possibly even more if they have multiple Reconstructor Revolutions. So if you go first, you're playing a monster and you're playing as many spells and traps as you can to just empty your hand. You're not activating your Thunder Dragons, etc. You also don't want to attack into a set monster unless you have, in most cases, at least 2 attackers, because Big Shield Gardna is fairly common in this deck because it's like the Golden Apples, it's kind of and like the Lady Assailant, it's both stall and damage because almost nothing has 2,600 attack in this meta. So if you attack into Gardna, you're taking 1,000 damage or 500 or whatever, and they get to avoid that attack. So the monsters they play are Big Shield Gardna, the Cobra, the Lady Assailant, the Gravekeeper, who's not going to be set almost ever, and sometimes I've seen a few Cocoons. So I think, and Needle Ball. I think those are kind of the monsters that you sometimes see them play. And so you want to make sure that your attacks count. And so if you're attacking into a Big Shield Gardna without a second guy to follow it up, then you're just taking damage for no reason. And it's not worth the risk, just in case you can get rid of the Cobra Jar or the Lady Assailant. You don't need to get rid of those ones ASAP. It's not like with other decks where you need to fight for the board position anyway. You just want to protect your life points. So it's worth it to wait a turn to attack to make sure that you can kill the Gardna instead of trying to attack the Cobra or the Lady Assailant as soon as they come down. Unless, of course, you're going to die next turn, in which case you just have to risk it. You have to attack into the thing so that you can clear the way for your other guy to attack or whatever the issue is. But for the most part, you don't want to attack face down guys unless you have 2 attackers. And the last tip is that once you survive that initial onslaught, the first turn or 2, you drop all your guys, you're being careful about how you attack, After that point, you want to be as aggressive as possible in terms of just going face, because at that point you're in a race with them for them to top deck lethal with burn spells before you can kill them out with your monsters. And since they have so few defensive cards, it's usually only going to take a couple of attacks to get them dead, because they don't have too much defensive abilities, and it really only takes like 2.5 direct attacks to kill someone. So you just want to make sure you do that as quickly as possible. You're not going to want to set monsters or stuff like that if you can avoid it at that point.
All right, that's it's everything you need to know about Téa Burn. Hopefully, this all that helps you play the deck and also play against it on the PvP ladder.
Yeah.
All right. The last thing we're going to talk about is Pegasus, obviously, since he's still around. And we're both using different decks to play him and get the rewards. So what have you been playing?
So I've been doing a modified version of my Bakura deck. My initial time playing it was actually just my Bakura deck, and it worked fine. But then I decided to modify it a little bit to make it a little bit more efficient. And so, as you might recall, the Bakura deck used the Holy Guard and the Unhappy Girl combo to kind of lock things down so that you can stall. And then I modified it to add Polymerization and Red Eyes Black Dragon and Meteor Dragon so that I can get out a big guy, get the points for the Polymerization, and then I'm doing the Ritual Summon of, what's her name? Ku Chulainn. Yeah. Ku Chulainn. And then she eats the Red Eyes, and then I'm using a couple Union attacks and attacking with Vassal, and you know how it goes. You get the effect damage points, and you get the no cards and deck points and all of that. And I ended up my best one so far against the level 30 Pegasus, because he has been the easiest one to farm for me, probably for everyone. I mean, he's the level 30 one's super easy, and I've got 9,200 against him.
That explains why you didn't get any rewards. I thought that was on a level 40.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, that's kind of what I'm putting myself into doing it. But we talked about it a little bit. The level 41 has the catapult guy.
Cannon Soldier.
Yeah, thank you. Cannon Soldier, who is like just enough to mess up enough of my farms where everything's going just fine. And then all of a sudden he's just like throwing 2 tunes at me every turn. That I decided I was just going to stick with 30. Like I said, I'm not terribly impressed with the tunes or anything, so I don't particularly like want his dual rewards. And so I'm just getting the points so that I can finish up the event rewards, I guess.
Yeah. I've been playing Cerberus for 40. I actually got a second copy for more consistency, but it relies on draw sense low levels, so you have to take 1,800 points of damage and you can draw Cerberus. And it's pretty straightforward. You know, you play some field spells, you play Murmur of the Forest, some spell removal. If you get some tunes on the board and you feel like you're going to lose, you might as well destroy Toon World. This deck is pretty... I'd say it typically gets the high 5,000s, which isn't too high, but it's fairly consistent. When there's more stipulations you meet, you get to 6,000. Sometimes you do mess up if you use the spell on a random card he has. He has a card called Judgment of Anubis. And if you destroy Judgment of Anubis, or you flip it over, your Cerberus dies. So once I took 7,000 points of damage just because I flipped over his card. And also sometimes you destroy Toon World and you destroy a monster. He activates Mishazuri on your Cerberus. So, there's a lot of ways you could go wrong. But once you get your Cerberus on the board, he puts the guys in defense mode, and that's the game. For level 50, I've been playing a Agent 07 deck, which I use for Kaiba typically. I took out Ryoku Field for some counter traps in 7 Tools of the Bandit and Overwhelm. And once Agent 07 is on the board, Pegasus can't really kill you. He has cards like Skull Lair, which could destroy your Vassal. This deck is a Union Attack Vassal deck for 5,000, by the way. And it's important to know Skull Lair is actually the slowest trap card. He has to remove guys from his graveyard to kill your guy. But even Twister can counter it. Sometimes Twister, you think it can't counter an effect, but in this case, it does. It actually does work for that final attack. So Twister, 7 Tools, or Overwhelm can all work to counter Skull Lair. He also uses Magic Drain, so sometimes you're putting Secret Pass to the Treasures or Union Attack, and he uses Magic Drain. You could discard an extra card like Soul Exchange or some magic card you have, or any of the trap cards I mentioned before. They all counter Magic Drain. So make sure to have 2 of those down before your final attack. And Pegasus 50, as we mentioned, is kind of limited, so there's only a certain number of runs you can get out of that.
Yeah, I think, just to clarify a point, the reason why you can counter Skull Lair with Twister and whatnot is because Skull Lair's ability does not activate when he flips it. So he flips it, you get a chance to respond, and then he has to activate the ability of removing the stuff to use it. And if you played some PvP, you probably played against Skull Lair. It's good because you can use it multiple times. You can activate that as many times as you want, so long as you have the guys in your graveyard. But it's not good because it gives you that chance to counter it by just destroying it. You don't have to negate it like you would other traps.
Yeah, one of the most tricky things about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is speed of spells and traps. Like, there's like a whole rule book about which one goes first. Like, you think about the counter traps and the quick plays, they're a little faster. But even in this case, Skull Lair seems to be the slowest type of trap card in the game.
Yeah, I think, not to get too far off on the tangent, but I think that's one of the biggest strengths of making Yu-Gi-Oh! A digital game through Duel Links is that we don't really have to keep track of the rules anymore, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a lot of fun cards, a lot of fun effects. It's a well-made game in a lot of respects, but one of the problems that I've always had with it is that it's like weirdly complicated with these weird interactions and like secret rules, and a lot of cards have like an entire paragraph of text on them, and so it's a lot cleaner when the computer kind of takes care of all of that for you, and you're like, oh, it's highlighted, I guess I can use it this time.
Yeah, that's cool. Anything else?
Yeah, before we move on, I added to the show notes, I saw on Reddit a Redditor named Polar Bear in the Sun, so he's melting, came up with a level 40 Pegasus farm deck that does not use Union Attack, and that can get, he's saying he's getting 8,000 plus points with it, and he has a dual assessment score here in his album, so I believe him, 8,500 on this one. So I haven't tried it yet because I found it recently, but I think it's a good thing to try out if you're interested in trying to farm the level 40, but you don't have Union Attacks or maybe some of the other more expensive cards. You can take a look at that and see if the budget version kind of works for you.
Yeah, so farm Pegasus to relinquish for sure, and everything else after that is up to your want, I guess. Whatever tune cards you want or any game mats, card sleeve backs.
So did you think that Pegasus seemed easier this time?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I kind of noticed, like I said, level 30 farm is like super easy. It's as easy as farming the legendary duelists. Some of them, like Yugi and Weevil and Rex, are like super easy to farm. Pegasus level 30 feels just like that, where so long as you draw your unhappy girl, it's almost impossible to not succeed against the level 30. The level 40 is a little trickier, but it seems like people have figured that one out as well. And even level 50, there's the Agent 07 deck. I tried your deck when he showed up for me the second time, and it works pretty well. So I'm not sure if they dumbed Pegasus down, because
I think compared to Bakura, he just doesn't have the cards that straight up disrupt you. He's reactionary, I guess.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's just the nature of tune cards. Obviously, that doesn't apply to the level 51, but the nature of tune cards is that they just give you a whole turn to figure out what you're going to do, because they can't attack right away. So I'm not sure if maybe it's just the nature of Pegasus as compared to other event bosses, or if it's that they made Pegasus weaker because people were complaining that they didn't get all the stuff last time. Or maybe it's just because we have better tools now that most people have Union Attack and stuff. We have better tools for farming. Maybe that's what's going on as well. But I don't remember him being this easy last time Pegasus came around. So I'm not sure.
He's just not a savage anymore. He's just completely refined and easy to go.
Yeah, he's an old softy, that guy.
All right.
18 souls.
Yeah. Let's go to our shout-outs. Let's talk about the guys on Twitter who talked to us quite a bit. Lats212, thanks for bringing up the suggestion about Téa Burn, which we talked about a lot today. Non-SCPO, thanks for interacting with us and sharing some of your thoughts on Twitter. And we'll give out more shout-outs to people who talk to us on Twitter, talk to us, share us your decks, give us some feedback.
I've got one more as well. I think it's Winner, maybe. It's WINAR 23 for liking, or for reading, presumably, and liking the episode 5 post on the website. We love to see people going over to the website, checking out the show notes, and especially for that one where I messed up and we accidentally didn't have a audio show. It's nice to see that some people were still keeping an eye on it and making sure that they're keeping up to date on where we're at for the week.
Yeah. So we're going to have a lot more to talk about in the coming weeks. This is going to be up on your podcast hosting sites, so iTunes, Stitcher, anything really. We have our website, the duelassessment.wordpress.com, if you want to check out some of the deck lists and also read this in word form. Email us at theduelassessment@gmail.com, or you can interact with us at Twitter. We encourage it at duel_assessment, at GreenRanger HS, and at HS Decktech.
Sounds good. Look forward to hearing from you guys.
All right, enjoy the game, guys.